This is the defendant's opening statement in the case of Ramirez versus the City of Chicago. You've heard of a tale of two cities. Well, this is a case of two tales. There's two stories here that are very, very different. They kind of start the same, they kind of end the same, but the middle is very different. And it's not a matter of how somebody saw the facts. It's very clear in this case, somebody's lying and somebody's telling the truth. It was a Friday night, and Mr. Ramirez went over to his friend's house to play cards, have a couple of beers. After a while, they decided they went out to a bar, had a couple of drinks. They went to another bar, had another couple of drinks. Altogether, Mr. Ramirez had 4 or 5 Scotch and waters. Then they went back to the friend's house. He got his car and proceeded to come home. About that time, there was a burglary in Humboldt Park, and there was 2 plainclothes officers in an unmarked car slowly cruising down the streets looking for suspects. Well, there's disagreement about who turned where and when and all that sort of stuff, but they ended up on West Evergreen, and that's a one-way road. There was cars parked on either side. Mr. Ramirez couldn't get around the unmarked car. But eventually he was honking, he was yelling, he was angry. Eventually they came to an opening in the parked cars, and the police car, the unmarked car, pulled over to the side to let him go by. Unfortunately, Mr. Ramirez pulled up next to the car and stopped. This is where the stories diverge. Mr. Ramirez's story says windows were rolled down and there was a bit of a yelling match. Mr. Ramirez got out of his car and went to the front of his car. Officer Levy, the driver, got out of the unmarked car and went to the front, and there was another yelling match. And then Mr. Levy hit Mr. Ramirez, according to Mr. Ramirez's testimony. And they were fighting, and as the fight progressed, they moved towards the back of the unmarked car, and eventually Mr. Ramirez goes down, hits his head on the bumper, is on the ground, Levy's on top of him, and at the time where Levy is in control of the situation, explains to him he's a police officer. Ramirez says, okay. Levy gets up. Ramirez rolls over and jumps to get up, and he's shot in the back, according to Mr. Ramirez. The 2 police officers, these are men with experience. They've been with the force many years. They're plain clothes now. They're not just driving a patrol car, issuing traffic tickets. They've got experience. They've done this a few times. They both agree that Mr. Ramirez got out of his car and ran around the back of his car. In the taillights of his car, they could see he had a knife. Mr. Levy jumps out to defend himself. And as Mr. Ramirez comes up to him to stab him, he grabs his forearm with both hands to hold him, and even at that, he receives a minor flesh wound. And his partner, Mr. Waldman, comes around the back of the unmarked car and shoots Mr. Ramirez in the back. Clearly a justifiable shooting to protect the life of a fellow officer. There's discrepancies. They say he was yelling in Spanish, he had the knife in his right hand, but it's not a perfect world. Police officers don't have perfect memories. But that's a long ways from saying that the officers are lying, out and out made up an unbelievable story and are trying to get out of a mistake. These are men they've made mistakes. They've admitted their mistakes. They're police officers, and we wish to show you in this trial that Mr. Ramirez attacked a person he didn't know was a police officer, but he attacked a man with a knife with a 6-inch blade, and it would be wrong to pay a man money for assault with a deadly weapon.